My name is Kelly Tindon, and I feel very humble and excited to have been asked by Father David to deliver a message this week. My husband and I, Larry, and our two children have been here at St. Stephen's for a little over a year now, and I've gotten to know many of you, and some of you know that I have a background in ministry. I attended Duke Divinity School and graduated with a Master's in Divinity about 9 years ago. My original plan in doing that was to go into some kind of professional ministry, but due to a variety of circumstances, I ended up working in higher education. So today, being given the opportunity to preach allowed me to pull out a lot of my old commentaries and textbooks, and that was really exciting to get to go back to a lot of that. And I've decided to talk a little bit about the book of Romans, and that is kind of following what Father has been preaching on in the past few weeks. I am very intrigued by the chapter that is in our lectionary today, chapter 8, because this chapter is one that all of us have probably heard at some point, and if not the whole thing, like at least the little snippets of it, right? The big Christian bumper sticker phrases. If God is for us, who can be against us? We are more than conquerors. What can separate us from the love of Christ? We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God. These are like the hard hitters in the New Testament, right? These are very comforting phrases, and ones that all of us, I'm sure, have either heard or used at some point in our lifetime. Even if we're maybe not familiar with other parts of the Bible, we know these ones. These are the good ones. But I wanted to find an approach to this passage that went a little bit beyond those cliches and the bumper sticker phrases that are normally extracted from this chapter. Paul's letters tend to lend himself to these bumper stickers because of the way he writes, which is probably why we have so many of them and why they were so appealing to communities in that time. It's obvious that Paul has a lot that he wants to say to his churches, and he doesn't waste any time in the book of Romans getting to the point. He does these preliminary introductions in chapter 1. He's like, hi, my name is Paul, and he talks to the Romans about having wanted to come there for some time, but as soon as he gets done with those introductions, he doesn't waste any time. He goes straight to the point and says, okay guys, the wrath of God is being revealed. It is really, that's it. Have you ever watched maybe a political debate or a forum, and people give all of these very polite introductions? I'd like to thank the university for hosting me today. Paul doesn't bother with any of that. He gets straight to the point. But the wrath of God is coming. And then, in these next few opening chapters of Romans, he spends a lot of his time dealing with some hard stuff. He tries to explain sin. He tries to understand his own sin. He tries to help his readers understand their sin. He urges them to reckon with it. He doesn't shy away from these topics. And the reason that he's doing this is because he is absolutely convinced that Jesus is coming back during his lifetime. No question. And probably coming back during the lifetimes of a lot of the people that he's writing to. So this influences everything that he is saying. You can sense the urgency and the sincerity in his tone in almost every sentence. He genuinely wants the church in Rome to be prepared for what is an imminent coming of Jesus. He is fixated on this message and wants his readers to feel the same sense of urgency that he feels. Now there's a theological term for this, because I couldn't give a sermon without introducing some fancy language that I learned in divinity school, right? So I'm going to give you a phrase that you can now take home and impress all your friends with. The phrase for this idea of humans being active participants in the coming of Jesus is called participationist eschatology. There you go. It's a theory. This is something that theologians kind of have come up with in order to explain what Paul's writing about. And there's particularly a scholar whose name is E.P. Sanders, and he is someone who taught at Duke for many years, so someone that I've read here and there. And he wrote one of those, have you ever seen those small books that are, they're called A Very Short Introduction to? They're about this big, and there's 70, 80 different topics. You may have seen them in bookstores. He wrote the one on Paul. So, side note, want to read more about Paul? That's a pretty good little starter. And it's very accessible, very readable to us normal people. But E.P. Sanders wrote this little book about Paul. And one of the things that he points out is Paul encourages right action along with faith. Those things go together for him. And it's not just about waiting around for the coming of Jesus. It's not about detaching from our daily life while waiting for this big event to happen. Paul wants the churches to know they have a responsibility to participate in this coming of Jesus. It's not just something that happens to us, it's something we get to help bring about. We as the Christian community, they as the Church of Rome. Now, in these chapters, Paul reminds me a lot of my mom when I was growing up. We are fortunate that we have a lot of family around us in Goldsboro, and we always host the events, right? Whether it's birthdays or reunion or Thanksgiving. Like, that was our big event that we would host at our house. And around November 21st, 22nd, my mom's entire personality would change, and it would become all about hosting this event. I think that even she would admit this is true, that this was the way that she would get very focused on this event that was coming. And unfortunately, my sister and I, we just didn't share that same sense of urgency that she did. During these few days, the house preparation would begin. We'd all have our jobs. Usually my sister and I would clean our rooms and clean our bathrooms. There was vacuuming, there was cooking, and there was stress. The stress that there wouldn't be enough chairs for everyone, that there wouldn't be enough food for everyone, enough parking, all these things that we do to get ready to host people. As kids, my sister and I, again, we never felt that same sense of urgency. I didn't understand why I had to clean my room if nobody was going in. Right? I didn't understand why that was important. And I would obviously try to find a way to put in as little effort as possible. And my indifference, and my sister's indifference, it added on to that stress because we didn't understand why all this preparation was so important and what it would mean to my mom and to all the people that were coming to join us for Thanksgiving. I didn't understand why these little things, like vacuuming the carpet, picking up the toys from the living room, making sure there were enough chairs, cleaning the bathrooms, preparing a menu, right, that caters to everyone's different dietary needs. All of these things end up making this event more meaningful in the end. Our preparation was a practice of hospitality and of kindness and of inclusiveness. These things mattered just as much as the event itself. Because it meant that once everyone arrived, they all had a place to sit. There was enough food. Let's be honest, there was usually too much food. And if my sister and I did our jobs right, there would be clean bathrooms for everyone to use. We didn't have to scramble at the last minute because we had taken all these needs into account. So we go back to Romans and read it kind of with this metaphor in mind. I realize Paul's doing something pretty intentional in formatting his letter the way that he has. He starts off, chapter 1 and chapter 2, gets his reader's attention, like God's judgment, God's wrath is coming. And then he warns against judging others. He talks about the volatile relationship between Jews and Gentiles. and the relationship that they have to learn to cultivate and work out together. It talks about acknowledging sin, reminding the church not to let sin reign in your mortal bodies, and offering their bodies over to God. The weaknesses of the flesh and the dangers and desires of succumbing to the flesh. This is all hard, uncomfortable stuff that has to be dealt with before Christ returns. Or, I should say, in order to prepare for Christ's return. This is the responsibility they have if the church is going to call themselves Christians. But then we get to chapter 8, and Paul changes his tone. Instead of adding to this growing list of responsibilities, he gives some comfort and some perspective, and basically reminds them what all of this is about. The Spirit will help us in our weakness. It will intercede for us. All things are going to work together for the good of those who love God. If God is for us, who can be against us? What could separate us from the love of Christ? It's like it's a deep breath. It's all going to be fine. Neither height nor depth, angels or demons, neither dirty bathrooms, nor unvacuumed floors, neither spilled cranberry sauce or dry turkey will separate us from the love of Christ. This is what the church in Rome is preparing for, and this is what we are preparing for. It's why it all matters, because of Christ's love for us. Now look, why didn't Paul just start his letter this way? That would have been a lot more pleasant, right? Like, open the letter this way with all of these warm and fuzzy feelings before charging into a diatribe on sin and judgment and wrath. I know that that would have made my sensitive spirit feel a lot better if I could open Romans and it just starts with all things work together for the good of it. Like, that would have been so nice. But I don't think this would have been as effective or achieved the same results that Paul was wanting. Imagine if, a few days before Thanksgiving, instead of giving us all jobs to prepare, my mom had just said, guys, nothing to worry about. Like, it's all going to come together for the good of those who love God. Like, the Spirit's going to help us. It's all going to be fine. Again, this would not have been as effective in motivating my sister and I to actually do the work of inviting and preparing for people to come in. So I think that that's what Paul is doing here in structuring the letter this way and making sure that his readers aren't left without some context for what all of their preparation is for. He's not saying that Jesus requires us to work in exchange for his love, rather that that's what our Christian identity predisposes us to do, is to participate in ushering in God's kingdom. We are not being called to live with an attitude of indifference or apathy, making ourselves feel better with just those little bumper stickers and passages. We can't just skip to the end because that's the part that makes us feel good. There's all this other preparation that we have to keep in mind and participate in as well. So a final thing that's important to remember is, in the beginning of Romans, Paul is addressing this letter to both Greeks and non-Greeks, both the wise and the foolish. His words, not mine. By doing this, he reminds the church that, one, participating in the kingdom of God is everyone's responsibility. But also, the kingdom of God is for everyone. Even people who don't always pull their own weight. There's always somebody that shows up at Thanksgiving empty-handed, right? Like, maybe you and I have been those people before, like, forgot our fried chicken on the stove when we arrived to the potluck. And yet, we were still invited to the table. This work of preparing for the kingdom of God is not always going to look fair. And all of our roles in this work of preparation is going to be different. So let's just look at what our job is here at St. Stephen's, in our community, to prepare for the kingdom of God. What does Paul's message mean for us at this church today in this community? Ushering in the kingdom of God is a huge responsibility. And if we want to do it well, we have to prepare well. We're going to have to clean our dirty rooms, or in other words, confront our sin and confess our mistakes to God and each other. We're going to have to put extra chairs around the table for the crazy aunt and uncle, or in other words, show love to people who we might think don't deserve it. We have to pick up the toys on the living room floor, or in other words, we have to let go of the grudges and opinions that harm others, even though we'd probably rather hang on to them. We're going to have to clean the bathrooms, or in other words, cultivate openness and humility when we'd rather be indignant and stubborn. We're going to have to be conscious of the menu and the food that we prepare, or in other words, remember the specific needs of the people in us and around us, and try our best to meet those needs with the resources that we have. This is not easy work, but it's important work. It's not glamorous work, but it's holy work. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.